Right, so I'm going to just start again because I've just realized I didn't hit the recording button. So sorry to have to repeat what I've said. And that is that the first question I asked you in activity 8 was the age of Feuerstein. The answer is 93 years old, and it's not been used to test your mathematical ability, but it is really just to emphasize the point that he devoted his entire life to helping children and to the development of their cognitive skills. He took his studies and his work to many countries in the world. He developed tests to assess children and to help them. And these are available in many different languages, and they are culture fair and appropriate for the different countries. So that was question 1. Question 2, it says that he believed that it is our duty to fellow human beings to help them achieve. He said we need to have the belief that a person can achieve, which is characterized by, and you had several options. So we're going to go through the no's first, and then we'll go through the correct one, and we'll talk about why, or what the reason is behind it. So the first option you got was that belief is generated by self-will, and people can only be helped if they want to be. Now, if you look at that comment on its own, it doesn't sound like it's wrong, because unless people want help, how can we help them? They need to want to actually do better, and they want to be assisted. So that's true in a sense, but that's not what the question is asking. Okay. The second one was B, was about the issue of, I'm trying to find it now. B is the belief to that the belief is important to help people, but only those in the first 8 critical years of their lives. Well, that's what a lot of developmental psychologists said before him. And quite honestly, that is false. He disproved that theory because he showed in his research that people in their adolescent years and even in their young adulthood years could actually be assisted and develop further in their cognitive thinking. So that is obviously not the correct answer. I'm then going to move straight to D for dog. And that one is that the belief is one aspect of achievement, and the other is the genetic potential of the person. Now, obviously, a person's genetic potential is a factor. We can't deny that. But at the end of the day, he believed that it's the delivery of the mediation, the way in which the mediation is delivered to children, that is what really and truly makes a difference. And he's shown this in many countries all over the world, where you can take children, some of whom have been deprived of proper education. It obviously takes longer with those children, especially if they don't have language skills. But he disproved that completely, and he just said it's not just their genetic potential, sure, but a genetic potential is like a sort of a diagnostic kind of word, and puts you into a little category, and it's obviously a lot more than that. So the answer is C for cat, which says that belief is generated by our need to help others, and having that belief will enable you to help any person to achieve, and he, she will. And that really speaks to me as a human being, I must say, because if you can motivate people to want to learn, make them feel good about themselves to want to learn, and you believe that through what you do, they actually will learn and they can learn, the more you believe that they can do it, the more they're going to believe in it themselves, if that makes sense. So it really is about that belief that there is always room for improvement, and that there always can be ways in which things can be done better. So that would be the answer. It would be C. So moving on to question 3, which is, according to Feuerstein, a person's behavior can be modified and the result will be, and I'm just going to go to the ones that are wrong first, which is B for butterfly. It says this is possible for all persons excepting those with intellectual impairment. Now, in fact, his first work was with children with Down syndrome, and he showed that every child he worked with could improve in some way. So we cannot actually shove someone in a category and say this person is on the edge of an major intellectual category, if you like, and well, we don't like it. And therefore, there's only so much we can do and no more. But if you work with children, as they do in a lot of the schools for the intellectually impaired, it is amazing how much improvement they can actually show. So that one is obviously not the correct answer. Then C for cat was the one about their knowledge base will be enlarged. Yes, well, we would agree. Obviously, if you are going to be modifying children's thinking strategies, you are going to expand their knowledge because they'll be learning a lot more information. But remember, it's a lot more than that, because by teaching them the cognitive functions underlying the knowledge they need to gain, they in fact are going to be developing those skills that they need to do well, and they can transfer that to other subjects as well. So this is really not totally correct. And then the other one that was also not totally correct is D, the one D for dog. They will achieve their underlying potential as identified in IQ tests. He was very anti-IQ tests for reasons that I've spoken about already regarding genetics, but he finds them very labelistic. I find them very labelistic myself, and they speak to diagnosing issues, and quite honestly, it puts a person in a category. It doesn't allow for room for improvement. Today, we've heard a lot about EQ, and you've probably studied it elsewhere, but we've also learned about the effects of effective mediation that can be carried out. So obviously the answer would be A for animal. As the brain shapes behavior, so behavior shapes the brain. So in fact, as we are teaching children the various cognitive functions that they need to develop, so new neural pathways are laid down in those children's brains, and he's proved that. It's amazing. He's proven it. It's absolutely amazing. And think about this. The more neurological pathways you lay down, the more you are able to use those cognitive functions. So it can only get better and better and better. So it may sound like a weird answer, but he mentions it in his address, and he speaks about the brain shaping the behavior and the behavior shaping the brain. So I hope that that has cleared up some of the issues under activity 8. Then it would have been nice to have discussion, but we don't have time. We're unable to do it now, but please, if there's anything urgent cropping up along the way, just pop it in the chat feature. So moving on now to activity 9. In activity 9, and I'm just watching my time, I can't speak to you now. I don't know what's quite happened here. Someone has done something. I don't know if they're doing some bombing of my session or what they're doing. I'm trying to get back to my main screen. All right, there I am. I hope we won't get a Zoom bomber. They bomb Zoom sessions and put all sorts of graffiti and things all over. If that happens, I'm going to have no choice but to end the session. So let's hope we don't have any problems. And it's just someone joining in. Right, so moving on to activity 8 then. Okay, so Lee, you've shared your screen. You need to not share your screen, please, because you want to see me. And I hope this time I'm on the entire screen and I'm not just this little box talking in the corner, which was the error I made last time. So I trust that everything is fine. I'm just going to see if anything's popped up with the chat. Okay, that seems to be fine. Right, so moving on to this one, I'm going to try and share my screen now. Let's hope I manage to do it, at my ripe old age. So I'm going to press share my screen. Yes, I'm going to do that. And I want to show you the diagram that I have open, which let me just see where that is. Trying to find my diagram. I can't seem to see it. Lee, will you please stop sharing your screen share? Because we don't want to see your screen share, Lee. We want to see Mrs. Wright. I'm trying to find my diagram. There's my diagram. Can everyone see that on the screen? Just let me know in the chat. Is that visible? Is that visible? Okay. I'm assuming that it's visible. I can't see anything in the chat session right now, so I really hope that it is visible. And I assume that I'm still recording, so everything should be fine. Right, so I gave you this diagram, which also appeared in the videos as well. The only difference is that we have one extra piece. It's not in 8 pieces, I think it's 9 pieces now. And that was this one on the sense of belonging. It's mentioned in your textbook reading, which is the second chapter from the book that I've been using. And it's the chapter by Lemofsky. And it's mentioned there, but it's not mentioned in the video. But what I suggested that you did here was you watch the video and you make notes under each of these particular, what do we call them, criteria for MLE. And we know that the 3 in the middle are the universal criteria. In other words, whatever cognitive functions you are wanting to teach children, those 3 particular criteria have to be present. And that's namely intentionality and reciprocity, which is all about having a purpose to your lesson, to your cognitive function you're wanting to teach. And then the reciprocity is about actually interacting with the learners and getting their engagement. So we do that by questioning, by giving them a response time, by asking a question, not diving straight into the answer, but actually asking the question and giving them time. And there are many other examples that you could use here. In the meaning part, it's about understanding the meaning behind why you're teaching them a particular cognitive function. And so we need to ask learners, for example, to explain sometimes, and we can tell whether they understand the meaning. And transcendence was the other very important one, which is about once you've taught a particular cognitive function, are they able to use this function in another novel example or setting? So those 3 we can obviously see are universal and they have to be present all the time. The others may be present all of the time or may be present some of the time. So they are ones that you can have a look at in your reading. I'm just watching the time now. We have a look at in your reading, and also you can watch the videos and you can put information into each one of these. But I just want to say 1 or 2 comments on every single one to make quite sure you understand what we're talking about. The ones on the outside are called situational parameters of MLE. So they are situation specific. And the reason why I'm reminding you of these criteria for mediation is you might well want to talk about some of them when you do your assignment, because that is how, in fact, you are busy mediating the cognitive function that you are busy working with at that time. So, for example, under self-regulation, that's the metacognitive skill that you would be developing. And that is where you would want them to, for example, say things like, now I've done this step, what is the next step? They've learned it. What is the next step I need to do to be able to complete solving this problem, whatever it may be? In sharing behavior, it's all about cooperation and collaboration, which you as FP teachers know a lot about. because I'm quite sure that in any kind of classroom situation, you will be able to work in a group situation. One certainly hopes so, and the class is not too big, and children can communicate a lot in groups and share that way. Under individuation and differentiation, it's about, yes, we acknowledge that we have diversity in our classroom, but we need to recognize that although we're trying to get across a common cognitive function or a cognitive function they all need to know, we might find that they have their own individual interpretations based on their own personal experiences. We need to acknowledge that, but at the same time, we need to ensure that they do have a good overall understanding of what the requirements are. So, you want to take in their point of view, but you also want to acknowledge that there are certain things you want to teach them. The goal-oriented behavior is about goal seeking, goal setting, and goal achieving. And here, you would ask the learner, did you achieve your goals? You set a goal before you set about this task, and have you actually achieved that goal? So it's all around that, and you can read more about it in your reading. Challenge, novelty, and complexity is about being able to adapt to new situations. So very often when we teach children, we'll do a problem on the board together maybe. We might then get them into groups to work in a little group situation, and then we get them to work on their own so we can assess that they can actually do it by themselves. In self-change and modifiable entity, it's actually making changes and adjustments and to be recognized for what you're doing. So for example, if children are really battling with the concept, you might say, you know what, today was a bad day. Maybe you didn't all get it today, but don't worry about it, because we're going to get back to this tomorrow. We'll go over it. And by the end of tomorrow, I'm quite sure, or by the end of the week, you are going to be able to see that you're able to do it. Because in the back of your minds as teachers, you know that children's minds are modifiable. The optimistic alternative is, yes, sure, some of them are going to be battling and that will appear to be negative, but we've obviously got to keep children on a positive frame of mind so that we can be sure that they will be able to solve these problems in time. And then lastly, that sense of belonging, that yes, we understand there's diversity in our classrooms, but at the same time, we must also go beyond that, and we need to try and create a kind of class identity amongst children. That's why I suppose in many schools, children wear uniforms, and maybe in particular classes, they have special little groups or special things they do to give them that sense of identity. All their artwork is displayed on the wall, whatever it may be. So when you discuss the cognitive function that you want to develop or the set of cognitive functions you want to develop in your assignment, you may well be having to talk about some of these functions that are mentioned over here. So I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to get back to me. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Padiachi's on the group. I'm so glad. Thank you so much. So everything can be seen. So moving on now to the assignment. And I wanted to just show you my note on the assignment. I don't think I actually opened the assignment instructions beforehand, so I'm just going to show you the note that I gave you on the assignments, and we can speak to that because I think that will give you the necessary background for me to expand on, and I have about 12 minutes to do so. So you fourth years now, you know how to set out assignments. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how to do the introduction to your assignment. So I've given you some points there about it being quite straightforward. And in your assignment guidelines, it tells you to give the context and obviously say where you're going, etc. So we're going to move on from there. Then it talks about focus on Feuerstein's 2 primary modes of learning and do more research. Now, I've had a few emails from people in a bit of a worry, a quandary about this question or this aspect of the assignment, because they're telling me, Miss Wright, I go into research and all I can find is mediated learning experience. I can't find anything else. Isn't that what it's about? Why are you saying two? I don't understand what the other one is. Well, go back to your PowerPoint, because I found that in every single part, part A, B, and part C, there is a slide that talks about the two primary modes of learning. And I thought, to be kind today, I'll just put you out of your misery and tell you what they are so you can expand on it, okay? Because I don't understand why people are not following, sorry to say this, but following what's going on in the PowerPoints, which are also further explained to you. But obviously, the one type of learning that he acknowledges children do is they have what he calls direct learning experience. So he acknowledges, in a similar way to Piaget, that children learn from their immediate physical and social environments, and you can expand a little bit on that. And then the other mode of learning would obviously be mediated learning experience. So in mediated learning experience, you can expand on that. Sorry, I just was interrupted by someone. And you can talk a lot more about that. So that's what you would talk about in this particular part of the assignment. So I hope that that clears up a little bit. You might have more to say under mediated learning experience, but that's absolutely fine. It's not equally weighted at all. All right, so in the third one, it says culturally, the discussion between the cultural deprivation and cultural difference, according to Feuerstein, must be critically discussed. Now, this is spoken about in part B, the PowerPoint in part B that Mrs. Pariachi did with you, and also in part C that I did with you as well. It's actually discussed in there twice. So I think you would know the difference. But please remember, don't get confused with socially deprived, because we're talking about cultural deprivation, which goes beyond culture, but actually talks more about education that children get, but it does include culture. I'm not going to say any more. You've all got brains in your head. You'll be able to figure that one out. Now, this part, number 4, this is the part that seems to be throwing everybody. And I think it's because I used the term a whole school enrichment program. And I think people are now coming up with all sorts of whole school ideas. Like, I have had people with some wonderful ideas, but it's not the answer to the question. Things that you might be able to use when you are doing curriculum design in the second semester, where you might have to design a curriculum that you might add to the curriculum. I'm not quite sure what's being asked this year, because I'm no longer the HOD of that module. But in this particular aspect, we're not talking about something like, a massive recycling project for the school, or even a lovely idea such as doing a gardening project for the school. They're lovely ideas, but it's not answering the question. The question is about really what is happening in the classroom between you, the teacher, and the class, the learners. So you're going to be doing certain things in the classroom. Now, is there any way in which the school might be able to also support particular cognitive functions that you want to develop within your class? Can the school support it in some way, right? Then is there anything that maybe the parents can do? And I'll give you an example. If you're teaching fractions, a common difficulty children have is learning fractions. We all know about cutting up the pie or the piece of cake or whatever in the classroom. But if the parents at home know that this is what's being taught at school, there's no reason why they can't take a slice of bread and cut it into pieces and play around with those at home. So they are in fact supporting what the teacher is doing in the classroom. So one hopes that whether it's through a WhatsApp group with the parents or whether it is via the homework book or whatever methods or through a parents' evening that this is discussed, you need to decide what is appropriate for the particular cognitive function or set of functions that you're going to be focusing on. How can we get parental involvement to support this even further? Because you've all learned about the ecosystemic approach under Bronfenbrenner, that things work a lot more effectively when we're all working together. So the teacher's going to work with the child and the children in class. Maybe the school can echo it in some kind of school visibility program, or maybe not. You can say, no, it's not really possible, or it might be possible when we have a grade meeting, or we get the children to have special assemblies with their grade or something like that. But you need to decide what you think could be a positive way in which to support what the teacher's doing in class, and then what the parents can do. And then also, if there are any community members, you might find that there are certain community members or certainly certain community initiatives within the environment around the school where these learners can also be further supported through various means. Now, it isn't always possible. I know that not all communities are very enriched in this way. So you might say, in terms of your particular school that you were looking at, that you've experienced in practice teaching, the children are not coming from a community that might be able to really support and assist the children in any way. So it's quite possible that you might say that unfortunately this were not possible, but it may be possible to get in people from other communities to come and assist. I don't know. It depends on what specific area you are focusing on. So that's what I meant by a whole school enrichment program. It's about what you're doing in class that can be further supported by others around you if we're looking at this from a more ecosystemic approach. Okay, so I really hope that clears it up for you and you're not thinking about some grand, huge, big school program that can be done. So it says there in the notes, when choosing a specific area of concern, you should choose an aspect of your teaching in a specific subject. So let's say you chose word problems, or you chose a particular aspect of the science or maths curriculum, whatever it may be. So maybe from your own experience, you find that children are often having difficulties with a particular aspect of a subject, a particular set of things that you're doing in maths or in languages or in their first additional language or whatever it may be. You find that in your experience in a particular school, you find this was an area. What you then need to do is you need to say, well, this is the area I believe where the focus should be. And this is what I'm going to develop my assignment around. So is there a particular cognitive function that is associated with the ability of the children to be able to learn that skill? Or is there a set of cognitive functions that is associated with that particular task, or did I say activity, or aspect of teaching, aspect of the curriculum, if you like, that the children need to know about? And then how do I go about teaching them the underlying cognitive functions? Because remember what Feuerstein believed. He believed, and his institute still believes today, that when we teach children cognitive functions, we are actually teaching them the groundwork that sits behind what they're actually going to learn about. So once they know how to set steps in their learning, or once they know that they need to set a goal to aim towards what they want to achieve, or once they know that they need to stop and think before they take the next step, or whatever it may be, that's where you bring in some of those criteria of mediation, if need be. You might not bring in all of them, you might only bring in a few of them. So what are you zoning on? Don't please zone on some massive big enrichment program. Zone in on particular aspect of a particular subject that you found when you taught at schools, various schools, or a school in a particular grade. You want to focus on that aspect. What are the cognitive functions involved? How am I going to go about teaching this to children? And then what are the criteria that would be most useful for me in my teaching? So the focus is actually the cognitive function. So perhaps I should have placed more emphasis in that in my description of the assignment. So I hope this gives you a much better idea of what is involved there. So we've spoken about the rest there, and then we go on to the conclusion, which is quite straightforward. So I'm now going to get out of here, and I'm going to go back to the main screen. And yes, you can use fractions. If that is the main problem in your school, you may use fractions if you want. We've got about a minute or so left. No, we have 3 minutes left. How wonderful. Great. So I hope I didn't go too fast. I tried so hard to keep it in 40 minutes. But are there any questions that anyone wants to ask or comments they want to make? I hope you're feeling a lot more comfortable about the assignment now. So if you've been doing some preliminary work, don't think it's all been for nothing, because you've been able to answer the first few questions. Perhaps you just needed a little more guidance in this particular aspect of the assignment, the 35 marks part. So we know now it's all about the particular part of the curriculum or the particular part of the subject and so forth. How long should the assignment be? Well, I said 6 to 8 pages, but you know what? A really well-written 5-page assignment is quite acceptable. You don't need to go on and on. Please don't do that, because it just gives us work. And I'm trying to pick up the last comments there if there's anything I missed. To clarify around fractions, we'll need to say how parents, teacher, and community and everyone can contribute to ensuring learners are reinforcing the concept of fractions. That is totally and absolutely correct. That is correct. So that's what we're talking about here. Perfect. Anything else? We've got just over a minute left. So is there anything else you feel you need some clarification on? Any other queries you have? Or any comments you want to make, please do so. We have a little bit of time left, which is what I wanted. And remember, if we're following those criteria of mediation, you've got to believe in yourself that you can actually do this, because you can. And I know that it's only a week away, and I know that you have many assignments and tests coming up. I understand that. But you know, such is the life of fourth years. I've been lecturing fourth years for 10 years. I've been at Embry 10 years this year, and I've been lecturing fourth years all along. And because they do their teaching practice in the beginning, they land up having everything concentrated at one place. So the question here is, can you use an example where the school hosts specific, oops, I missed the last one. Let me just find it, trying to find it. The school hosts specific events which is related. Yes, great idea. Why not? There might be something that they can do. So we have less than a minute left, and I don't want to end it abruptly. So that's great. You're coming up with great ideas. Is there anything else before I close? Well, if there are any other concerns, please know that you can send me an email. I really hope that the session has assisted you in some way. And thank you for reminding me about the recording.